The rest of the story. Yes, there is a Santa Claus. Since 1950, he has been visiting Children's Hospital National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. each Christmas time. Each year, the nurses passed out candy canes and small gifts before Santa's arrival. Suddenly, there he was, big and beaming in his bright red Santa suit trimmed in gleaming white. Ward by ward, Santa made the rounds, visiting with each child individually, inquiring of Christmas wishes, comforting whom he could. Then after an hour and a half or so, Santa's visit was over, and he would return to wherever Santa returns until next year. One year he was about to leave the building when a hospital administrator came up to him. There was a child Santa had not yet visited who was asking to see him, a small patient on the 5th floor. Now, the 5th floor was where very sick little boys and girls stayed, where only doctors and nurses and mommies and daddies were permitted, but never Santa Claus, until now. He was taken to the elevator, down a corridor, then to the door of the patient's room. She was a little girl, 5 or 6 years young. Santa spoke briefly with the child's parents, and then opened the door and all went inside. She was so small, her skin quite white. She was a very pretty little girl, a fact which remained strangely undiminished by the tubes to which she was bodily attached. She was also quite still, as one who is very ill, and her eyes were glazed, had the barest touch of life left in them. But as Santa approached the girl's bedside, her vacant eyes began to glimmer, and then to sparkle, and then to shine. And Santa reached down, the child reached up, wrapped a tiny hand around 2 of Santa's fingers. She still had that look of amazement on her face, of wonder and astonishment. Santa spoke to the little girl as he'd spoken to the other children, warmly and quietly. And when he asked her what she wanted for Christmas, she was silent for a moment, then gazed up into Santa's face and earnestly told him, "For Christmas, I just want to go home." Tears welled up in Santa's eyes and spilled over onto his rosy cheeks. He assured the child in a voice that broke that he would do everything he could to make her Christmas wish come true. For several minutes thereafter, he stood beside the little girl, holding her hand, smiling through persistent tears at her own tiny, smiling face, and then he left. 2 days later, on Christmas Eve, the little girl, in a way, got her wish, went home forever. And all of the Christmases since that one, Santa has cherished what he calls the greatest Christmas gift he'd ever received, the bittersweet memory of those hopeful, shining eyes and of how they came to life before they closed. It has been suggested, whoever he is, that vision in red and white who has appeared at Children's Hospital in Washington for the past nearly 40 Christmases now, that he is not who he seems, but rather a man who all these years has inobtrusively volunteered his time, an ordinary man who is only pretending. And yet I would not be surprised, would you, to learn that he is the real Santa Claus, and that the rest of the long year he merely pretends to be the weatherman on the Today Show, Willard Scott. I'm told that each Christmas, Willard Scott receives a phone call from the parents of a little girl who was, once upon a time. Now you know why. Because now you know the rest of the story.